Hello, gumshoes. Welcome to another Friday night live. I'm just going to wait for confirmation that we have sound and we're on. Okay, great. All right. So, as I mentioned last week, this live is going to kick off a new series where we are going to go through the timeline quite systematically, starting in November 2017. So I'm going to start after the attack on my brother, just because I just really want to start on like what is most pertinent to these cases. So they're going to be significantly shorter. I want to open it up to people who would look at a 3-hour live and say, peace out, like me. I would never watch a 3-hour live. So those of you who do, kudos. But I'm going to keep these probably between 30 to 45 minutes. And each live, we're just going to get as far as we can through the timeline. There's a lot to cover. There is just so much. And I think what you'll see is that when you see some of these disparate events that we've all heard about in succession, I think it will draw attention to one, just the amount of planning that went into these alleged murders, as well as just the chaotic nature of these criminals and their co-conspirators. I believe they are co-conspirators. No one has been charged with being a co-conspirator. I think that they're just really focused on going after Lori and Chad. But so and then at times you'll see just the incredible speed of their activities, especially moving from one murder to the next. It's just like, yeah, someone is murdered and they are just moving on. They're already making plans for the next murder. So another change is that after this live, I'm not even going to go on camera. I'm just going to jump in and we're going to pick up where we left off the week before. So, and also, as I mentioned last week, I'm not going to do Q&A with these lives. One, that's kind of my guilty pleasure. That's when I get to kind of connect with the community. But it's not the best use of time because I typically spend a lot of time scrolling for questions. So if you have a question about the live or just about the case, just drop your question in the comments. So not the chat, because although I do review the chat, I can't respond. Once the live is over, I can't respond to anything. So if you have a question, just drop your question in the comments. I drop in there maybe once or twice a week, depending on the week and my load. But I do make a special point to answer questions. So without further ado, we are going to jump in. Okay, just 1 second. Let me just turn off. Okay. Yep. Okay. All right, so we're going to start with November 5th, 2017. That seems like a pretty pretty far back to go. However, I think that this is incredibly relevant and plays a significant role in all of the alleged murders that took place in 2019. So on November 5th of 2017, so this is almost whoops, just a second. almost a year before Chad and Lori meet. So I actually think that this is gearing up for, I personally believe that this is gearing up for Joe's death. So November 5th, Lori recorded a very disturbing rendition of the song Hallelujah. I'm not going to play it because my videos already get enough copyright strikes. Oh, that reminds me. If you ever see an ad on a Murderous Heart video, as I was very confused about the video that I did where I focused on the Smule recordings, I saw that there was an ad. And the reason, now I'm not benefiting in any way from this channel, but the reason that that happened is that there was a copyright strike because on several of the songs, Hungry Like a Wolf, Hallelujah. And so YouTube gives the company, the organization, the person who wagers the copyright strike the ability to run an ad so that they can monetize videos that have violated their copyright rights. Now, nothing that I have ever shared in any of these videos has been a copyright violation. It's always fallen within fair use. But even if someone, just makes a copyright strike against you, it does impact the channel. So, and besides that, I don't want to ruin the song for those who really love this song. So, but if you want to hear it, she doesn't have a bad voice, but if you want to hear it, you can go to my timeline on Analytics. Just search Analytics timeline. It's going to come up in Google. And you can click on source and it will open up the Smule site. But I will highlight some of the more significant lines because as I say here in the timeline, I do think that it's very insightful into her manipulation of her low IQ psychopathic brother, Alex. So she sang, I heard there was a new podcast Alex played and it pleased the Lord. He had no idea how it would change him. It started out with Julie Rowe, so great job, J. Rowe. And it turned on the light, and he was changed forever in an instant. He started small to build the light. Darkness went away at night. The Lord began to fill him. Hallelujah. He read a book on paradise. I believe that was Chad's book. He cried out all his tears at night and fell upon his knees now. Hallelujah. He knows there is a God above. He surely taught him how to love. And that confirms his end times every day now. The darkness now has left his heart. And I think that this is the most compelling line in her entire rendition. And he knows how to play his part. And Jesus smiles down on him forever. Highly doubt that. So I think that this line here is, my opinion, but I think that this is an indicator of Lori's success in being able to worm her way back into her brother's life and manipulate him to do her bidding. So how did that play out? Well, according to the Chandler police report, Colby, and that's Lori's son, Colby Ryan, had said that his mom and his uncle, quote, got close really fast at this time. So he said it was in January 2018. I'll just open it up. Colby indicated that he never really had a relationship with Alex. He described Alex as being a bum. Alex would tell him about his relationship with women, and he thought he was nasty. Colby added that Alex started to come around more and became super close with Lori around 2018. When asked to describe the relationship between Lori and Alex, Colby started by talking about his knowledge of Alex going after Joe. Joe Ryan. He knew that Alex was protective of Lori. Colby felt that Alex and Lori got close really fast after January of 2018. So Lori sings that song in November, and then Colby notices that Alex and Lori are hanging around and had gotten close in January. Colby stated that he knew Alex and Charles were cool with each other and that Charles had a lot of praise for Alex. Janice Cox, Lori's mother, had said the same thing. Okay. I noticed in the Gilbert police report that on February 25th, 2018, Melanie Gibb had become Zulema Pastenes' visiting teacher. Just open that up. This is an LDS thing. I think it was that people are just assigned to other people's homes, and I guess it's a way of like kind of reaching out, answering any questions, that kind of thing. So you see this. So this is when they connect. So they are friends long before, or have connected, we should say, long before Lori and Melanie Gibb meet. That won't be until October. Then on March 17th, 2018, Charles Vallow's mother, Tilda Doolin, died. Now, this is, you see here, March 17th. This is Charles' mother. I don't believe that this is Kay Woodcock's mother. I think they had the same father and different mothers. But I think that this is significant because one source, a confidential source, had told me that Lori did not attend the funeral with Charles. So the funeral was on March 21st, 4 days later. I don't know when Charles flew out exactly. I don't know if they knew ahead of time that his mom was dying or if it was an unexpected death. We don't know, but this funeral puts Charles in Louisiana on March 21st, 2018. And that's the same source. Okay, so we'll actually get to this part here. My brother, Joe Ryan, was found dead in his apartment in Phoenix on April 3rd. The autopsy said that it was a natural death. One thing I will say about this, I've talked about this before, that the medical examiner did not open Joe up. So his cause of death was based solely on his medical records, and an external examination. And when I interviewed for the Nancy Grace show for her podcast, I was on the line with several people, but one of them was an ME. And this was before we had gone live, but I had mentioned that they had never opened Joe up. And so he was very, very surprised to hear that. He said, well, wait, what do you mean they didn't open him up? I said it was based on an external examination. And so he made the point that the cause of death should not have been determined to be natural if he didn't open him up. But his opinion was, if you don't open him up, you didn't perform an autopsy. It's what another doctor, Dr. Amy Salerno, which we'll hear from her in a minute, she described it as a cursory autopsy. But he said that if you don't open someone up and do a thorough autopsy, that the cause of death should be, I forget if he said undetermined or something like that, but unknown or undetermined. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. That was just the opinion of one other ME. So also the police report had said that Joe, let me see if I have a link to it. Yeah. So the police report said that they estimated that the body had been um, in the apartment for 2 weeks, but then the ME estimated that it was a week. But Amy Salerno, who has been interviewed by the Profiling Evil podcast, she is my favorite interviewee of this entire case. I just find her knowledge, her medical knowledge, and her approach to things just refreshingly logical and I don't know. She's just really really cool, but in her second interview, she corrected what she had said in the first interview after reviewing the ME's report. So let's hear what she has to say.
Well, he was actually, and I misspoke a year ago. I said he was moderately decomposed. I think he was profoundly decomposed. Because when I read back on some of the autopsy, I mean, he had slippage of his skin, etc. But they did, a year ago, I told you that, in my opinion, they did what we call a cursory autopsy, in the sense that they did not open him up, look inside. They just did a sort of external cursory autopsy.
Okay, so, and this is going to get a little bit graphic. So if you are squeamish, maybe mute the live for about a minute. Janice and I had gone through all of the pictures from the welfare check. I shared quite a few of them in a live that I did, a very long live, where I address some possible signs of foul play. And this is when I was doing lives on my Analytics YouTube channel before I started A Murderous Heart. And so I pointed out some things that were concerning in the pictures, but there were some pictures I couldn't share. They were just too graphic. But you could tell from these pictures that when they moved Joe's body, by the amount of blood that was on the mattress after they moved Joe's body, it appears that his body imploded. And that's what Dr. Salerno talked about with the extreme skin slippage. And that's what the ME's report also noted. He noted it that I think he used the word extreme. And so I think that's why there was just such a significant amount of blood on the mattress after his body was no longer on the bed. And so given the state of decomposition, which Dr. Salerno references, I strongly suspect he was there closer to 2 weeks, if not possibly longer. The thermostat was also set at 74. I mean, it was just one of many weird things because there was a window open. And anyway, so uh, okay, so if you dial back from April 3rd, if you dial back 2 weeks, then Charles was gone at the time that Joe would have died, but Lori would have still been in town. So all I was told was that she didn't accompany Charles, which is very weird to be, married to someone, your mother-in-law dies and you don't even go to the funeral. But that aside, that would have put her in the Phoenix area, assuming that she didn't go somewhere else at the time of Joe's death. I'm not accusing her of foul play. I'm just noting the overlap in the timeline. Also, we know from the interviews of her friends in Hawaii that Lori left after Joe was found. Lori left and went to Hawaii and stayed with April Raymond, which is also a pretty solid pattern as we'll see as we go through the timeline, that when something sketch is about to happen or happens, Lori takes off, usually for Hawaii, even when her sister Stacy died. As the story goes, Alex was alone with her, and the rest of the family was in Hawaii. And that's not just from confidential sources. The Gilbert police report also referenced that because I believe it was Janice Cox's brother was in hospice, the same hospice as Stacy was in, or the same facility. I'm not sure if it was hospice, but it's the same facility that Stacy was in. And he had reached out to Janice to say, hey, it looks like Stacy could die. She's close to the end. And he asked them if they were going to come back to say goodbye. And his account was that he was just told that they were trying to make their way back. But according to a confidential source, they did not come back before Stacy died. And as Stacy's ex-husband alleged, Alex was alone with her and then spent, I think it was thousands of dollars on her credit cards posthumously. So apparently he was never charged with that. But anyway, that's what Stephen Cope, Stacy's ex-husband, said. Okay, so moving ahead, July 18th, 2018. This is the last time JJ Vallow was seen by a dentist. And these were the records that were used to help identify his remains. So let's see. It's somewhere in here. It's not particularly. You can pause the video and find it in here. Okay. Now, I also thought it was interesting that Tylee hadn't been seen by a dentist since 2017. We don't know when in 2017. I'm assuming that might have been around the time that she had her braces taken off. But so Chandler police had to get her dental records from Hawaii. So as I note here, it may be nothing, or it could be an indicator that Lori was already distancing herself from Tylee by 2017, or just not really connected and caring for her as a parent typically would. Okay. Jumping ahead to May 2018, Lori Vallow expressed fear about the end times during my visit to their home, saying that sometimes she thinks it would be better to put her kids in a car and go over the side or edge of a cliff, something to that effect. She was talking about the end times and just how scary that it would be. And I just said, Lori, no. But I think it's notable. So at that time, I think it's interesting that, Lori wasn't seeing herself at that time as a leader in these end times. And I attribute that to her at that point being solely a consumer of Chad's books and not a partner with him yet. So when she talked about it to me, she was clearly very upset, very concerned about the impact, and just really emphasized how terrifying the end times would be. I also thought it was interesting that another one of Lori's friends told Justin Lump shortly after the case went public. So the case went public on December 20th of 2019. A week later, one of her friends made a similar comment, and she had disguised her name and her voice. I think at this point, people were very afraid of interviewing, and so they were disguising their names. One of Charles' sons did the same thing. And I think after a while, they realized, okay, well, the family hitman was already dead, so they were probably okay. So we don't know who this was, and the voice is disguised. But let's listen to what she says.
Jane vividly remembers one disturbing thing she says Vallow would say. she said stuff like, you know, it's going to be the end of the world, and we should just all drive off a cliff and kill us and our kids and die all at the same time.
Now she wonders how she trusted the woman police say never reported her kids missing.
I would have trusted not my kids more than I would have trusted anybody.
So it's really kind of distorted, but all of these links are in the timeline. So if you want to listen to them, knock yourself out. But she was just talking about we should all just drive off a cliff and kill ourselves and our kids and all die at the same time. Again, I strongly suspect that we don't know when Lori said this to her friend. There was another friend who had reported the same thing. I don't know if this was the same person, but this was in the first. No, actually, I know who this person was. They had reached out to me through private message, and she had said she felt really bad. She thought that Lori was just being hyperbolic and didn't think that she was actually a danger to her kids. One of the problems with something like this is unless you have a recording, it's your word against Lori. So if you're to, try to report it, it's just not going to be taken seriously because there's no evidence. And at this time, I certainly didn't think that Lori could have possibly played a hand in my brother's death. She said some disturbing things like the world is a better place without Joe Ryan in it. But there's quite a jump to her just being obsessed and saying inappropriate things, which she did in 2007 on that vacation I've talked about in other lives. But anyway, so that is, I know 3 different people. I know that person wasn't the person who was interviewed only because she was very concerned about anyone finding out that Lori had also said this to her. Okay, so on September 21st, so now we're jumping ahead to September. Lori Vallow met Jason Mow in the celestial room of the temple, and he seemed quite starstruck when he recounts the story. I mean, it's really ridiculous because, once all these crimes took place, he was tripping over himself, trying to distance himself from everything that happened. But at the time, and thankfully, one of the YouTubers, I mentioned her last week, she was just a really, really nice person, Denise Rainey. She had gotten all of these podcasts before like they started disappearing. Unfortunately, she passed most of them on to a reporter who then buried them. And I'll never understand that because having been a reporter, that is the exact opposite of what a reporter is supposed to do. So, but she had shared this one podcast publicly, and then someone else who had a copy of another podcast had passed that on to me, and I also shared that. But as far as I know, those are the only 2 podcasts that are now out there. Hopefully, one day this person will either publish them or hand them off to someone who will publish them. Okay, let's listen to this.
Also with us today is Lori. And Lori is so cool. Lori and I met in a very, very unique situation. And real quick, Lori, let's talk about that before we start, because people don't even know who you are. Well, people in the know who you are, but one of the reasons why we're doing this podcast is so that we can spread the light of knowledge and help people learn about who they are and find their gifts and draw closer to Christ. And what happened to you was pretty unique, and how we ended up in the same room together is even more unique. So can we start off with that?
So, lovesick little puppy there. Okay, so that was September 21st. On September 22nd, the next day, Lori claims to have had a visitation. Now, I deduced this from something she had said to Zulema in a text message. And let's just read that. So on April 14th, 2019, Zulema said, was September 21st when you had your visitation? She talks quite a bit about this visitation where I think she saw Jesus and also Moroni, if I remember correctly. Lori replied, sorry, I lost you girls. I had it on September 22nd, the same day Moroni met with Joseph every year for all those years before he got the plates. He first appeared to him on the 21st, but continued through the night of the 22nd. Then he always met with him on the 22nd. Then Zulema says, that completes the revelation and prophecy. So who knows what that means, but there are references later on to there being a revelation and a prophecy about Lori going to Missouri and becoming a sacrifice, and then her and Chad leading the 144,000. Okay. Okay, so the next day, Lori and Chad supposedly meet, according to an anonymous email that was allegedly from a close friend of Chad. This is the source for that. This is the actual, what I call the Reddit email. The background on this is that someone had shared this, and so we know that the writer of this infamous Reddit email, now we know from the FOIA docs, is Melanie Gibb. And I'll show you, because when I came across this, I was like, finally, we know who the source is. Because when the person passed this on to the detective, this was after the announcement that the kids were missing. This was a couple months later. It says Chad and Lori Vallow, and that is also what this starts, except this has details, but this says source Melanie Gibb. And then you see they technically met. Oh, and this was the person's email. And then this is where this email starts. Now, the reason the formatting is so bad is that, so someone had taken these notes, passed them on to someone else, a person who was a recipient of this email. And the person's name isn't redacted in the FOIA docs, which I find a little unusual. But this person passed it on, but it had also been shared on Reddit. It was on an LDS subreddit, or like an anti-LDS subreddit, but then it was deleted, and then someone else grabbed it before it was deleted and then shared it on Reddit in the context of the case. So that's how it became public and stayed public. So the formatting is really off. And I had actually reformatted it as I believe that it was originally formatted. And I shared that in the Cool Cats group. But if someone reminds me, even in a comment, or if one of my mods remind me, I will share that on the community. I want to say the community, tab on YouTube. So if you go to YouTube, / A Murderous Heart, there's a community tab. And if I need to share clarification, or if there's a common question, like after the last live, I believe, there were like 3 questions that were nearly identical about Kay. And so I thought, okay, you know what? I'm just going to address this on the community tab, because I shared a number of screenshots and and stuff. So I'll be doing more of that, just sharing on the community tab. So I will share the formatted version just because it's a little easier to read. Having said all of that, it starts off, Chad and Lori Vallow. I think that this was like a subheading. And it says here, they met technically September 23rd, 2019 through Jason Mow at Temple. Chad was told around this time by one of the three Nephites, I think. I'm not even going to attempt. I don't know, Methoni maybe, that a special woman would come into his life. So this has always been interesting to me. I do put a fair amount of confidence in this email, in these notes. Well, especially now knowing it's from Melanie Gibb. Typically, if her lips are moving, she's lying. She is deceptive, in my opinion, a lot. And we will be pointing out a lot of those deceptions and claims that sometimes don't even match up with her own claims. Like she told Nate Eaton that she didn't find out for 4 days that Charles was dead, which is very difficult to believe since she claims that the whole reason Lori told her that she needed to leave the morning of the 10th because she had spent the evening of the 9th. She said the whole reason Lori told her that she needed to leave was that Charles was going to come and kill her. And so it's like, well, really, you wouldn't check in on your bestie to see if she was okay? But she claimed to Nate that she didn't find out until 4 days later. But she told investigators when she was interviewed that it was 5 days. So, I think in her mind, tomato, tomato. But to be fair, it is very difficult. It's not that difficult to remember actual events when they are significant, or you find out later that they're significant. I've talked about that before, but it is difficult to remember claims. And so anyway, having said that, when she sent this out, she wasn't trying to protect herself. I think she was, very much like get the information out there. I think she kind of got something out of being on the inside and having the inside scoop. That's even how she kind of drew Tammy's sister into her confidence and stuff. So this is a pretty solid pattern for Melanie. We'll also see her reaching out to other women who were in the group to let them know, hey, you know what, actually Lori said that you were dark and, yada, yada, yada. So anyway, but at this point, she didn't have a whole lot to protect. There wasn't, scrutiny on her or anything like that. So because of that, I put a little more confidence in some of these details. Also, we found out about this but pretty early on. I think it was like January that it was published. It was very early on in the case, and there were details that came out months later. So not everything has been confirmed to date, like this claim that they technically met September 23rd. 2000, and this was a typo. This was supposed to be 2018. Obviously, they didn't meet the day that JJ was being buried on Chad's property. So I am curious about this. There just seems to be a whole lot of, I don't know, thrills and chills around Lori and Jason meeting at the temple, which happened right before this. So, and there is a claim that Jason gave Lori to Chad, even though they were both married. We will see. Okay, moving ahead. According to one source, this was Julie wrote, but it was also backed up by the FOIA docs. Chad had started emailing Lori in October.
That's where Lori Vallow enters the picture. Not only did she read Chad's books for years, they finally met, and by October 2018, Chad started emailing the married woman and mother of JJ Vallow and Tylee Ryan. The emails include documents attached. This one from January 2019 talks about the 7 eras of influence. The last note says, gathering to Southeast Idaho and Arizona, laying the foundation for Zion.
Okay, now this is interesting. According to Brandon Boudreaux, Melanie Boudreaux started spending time with Lori around October. So this is the first source, and this timing is very significant. So it says here, on October 30th, which we'll get to, 2018, Chad Daybell emailed his future wife, Lori Vallow-Daybell, with a document regarding the Church of the Firstborn. The document shared numerical redactions as they related to Lori's family. Now we know that these were ratings, light and dark ratings. Of those rated, Melanie Boudreaux was, whatever, and her husband, Brandon Boudreaux. We know that Melanie had a high rating, a light rating, and Brandon was rated a dark spirit. Lori and Melanie began spending more time together around this time frame. So according to Brandon, this was around October was when Lori and Melanie kind of reconnected and started hanging out. So we see January 2018, Lori pulls Alex back because I think Alex was then useful to her. And now it appears that, even though they all lived in the same area, it appears that they weren't very close, or they just got really close in 2018. Alex in January, Melanie in October. And this was just another source that also talked about, Brandon explained how Melanie and he had a healthy marriage until late 2018, when Melanie began spending more time with her aunt, Lori Vallow. Okay, and we'll get to that email on October 30th. All right, so October 1st, Lori reached out to Jason Mow via email after meeting him at the temple. So this, I'll zoom in so hopefully you guys can see it. On October 1st, 2018, Lori sent Jason Mow the following SMS message. Hi, Jason. This is Lori Vallow. We met in the Celestial Room on September 21st. I have read and really enjoyed 2 of your books since then. So she just picked up his books and started devouring them, or claimed to. I just love Moroni so much. I'm not good at social media, so I was just going to give you my number and email so that if you feel inspired to put me into contact with some like-minded people, ... I would love that. And then something is redacted. So I just wonder if this has something specifically to do with Chad, but we don't know. I did talk to my bishop about having you come speak to our youth, and he said he would love that. And anyway, okay. So that was her email to him. The same day, okay, so on the same day, this was law enforcement's first record of Lori, Chad, Alex, and other co-conspirators conspiring to murder Tammy. This is significant because I just find it really curious that when they put a time, like a date on when the conspiracy started to murder Tylee and JJ, it started October 26th, which was the day that Lori and Chad met. But apparently, law enforcement has something with reference to the conspiring to murder Tammy that potentially dates back to as early as October 1st. So of course they're really careful in how they word these things, but I just thought it was really curious. So this is where they talk about it, that the defendants, Chad, Guy, Daybell, Lori, Noreen, Vallow, and Alex Cox, deceased on or about October 1st, 2018 to January 15th, 2020, in the county of Fremont, state of Idaho, and elsewhere, including Madison County, and as part of a continuing transaction and common scheme or plan in Fremont counties, Idaho, did willfully and knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree to murder in the first degree Tammy Daybell, did combine or conspire to commit murder, and or one or more of such persons did an act to affect the object of the combination or conspiracy. So the important thing here is that with Tammy, it started October 1st, which is before what we know to be what we believe to be the date that Lori and Chad actually met for the first time in person. I strongly suspect that they had communication before then, and but we just don't know. But I do strongly suspect that they had some kind of communication. Otherwise, where did this October 1st date come from? Okay, October 4th, Melanie Gibb claimed in an interview with Chandler Police that this was the date she met Lori Vallow. So, oops. Let me use this one. Okay, October 4th, 2018, Melanie Gibb. When I fill in these redacted elements, and I have, a disclaimer on the timeline about them. Many times, most times, they haven't been confirmed. Sometimes they have been, sometimes they're just really obvious, like there isn't another Melanie whose last name fits in the redaction. Or another Jason whose last name fits in the redaction. So sometimes I have more confidence than others, but anytime we're dealing with unredactions, unless they were left unredacted, either in another section of a police report or in another document. So, for example, the affidavit of probable cause in the murder of Charles Vallow was heavily redacted and then was left completely unredacted in the police report that they later released. So, I mean, that was like Christmas coming across that because then I was able to unredact the entire affidavit of probable cause, and I have a video about that. Okay, having said all of that, it's not an exact science. There are two, like in this example here, there are two main iCloud accounts for Lori that we know of. And I know of them because they'll be left unredacted elsewhere in a document or in another police report. One was called Lori for Style. That was the email account that I had. And then her secondary account, which she created, I think it was shortly after Charles found out about that she had sent this email as him to Chad. She created a second account, and that account was called Lolly Time. Okay, so having said that, Melanie Gibb and Lori Vallow physically met for the first time at a church event in Mesa, Arizona. They were introduced to each other by Jason Mow. Mow had previously met Melanie Gibb at the Mesa LDS temple. Okay, October 12th. This is very much an approximation. There was a confidential source who had reached out to me and had said, this person was a friend of Charles, and had said that there was a problem with the life insurance payout for Joe. And this person had said this person works in the industry and had said it's pretty unusual for a payout to take that long because he was found in April, and he estimated it was sometime in October. Charles had reached out to him and asked if he could help with getting things unstuck. This person made a call and he estimated that they received the money sometime in November. So this person was asked to help in October, and then they think that they received the money in November. So I believe that receiving that money was significant in funding the beginning of some of these conspiracies. Okay. On October 19th, so this was just 2 weeks after meeting Melanie Gibb, Lori shared her testimony at a group gathering in Melanie Gibb's home. And in this testimony, it was bizarre. Melanie had recorded this, and someone legally acquired this recording and passed it on to me, and I had shared it. I think this was sometime in 2020. So we know what she shared, and it was bizarre. We're not going to listen to the whole thing because I've shared that in another live. But she stated in this testimony that she wanted to murder Joe. And she said that she told her bishop at the time that he either needed to give her a temple recommend or that she would murder Joe. I'm sure it was somewhat tongue in cheek, but it's a very, very bizarre testimony. And what's really strange is that you hear the voices of Melanie Gibb, Zulema Pastenes, and was someone who sounds like Thor. And they're just eating this up. So she's talking about, and if our children go to the other side, it's because it was their mission to go to the other side. And if you're the only person left in your family, then that's just part of your mission. And Melanie even jumped in and interjected that this should give people incredible hope. So very, very, very weird. You can click on that if you want to hear it. So just a few days later, now I suspect also that part of the reason Melanie Gibb recorded this was to send it to Chad, potentially, possibly Jason Mow, and some of these other group leaders, we'll just say. I say that somewhat tongue in cheek. We don't know who all the leaders of this group were, but they have some overlap with the Preparing a People group. So anyway, so a week later, Lori and Chad meet for the first time at a Preparing a People event in St. George, Utah. You can go to that if you're so inclined. This is a pretty well known. And Melanie Boudreaux was there too. I will play this one because it's very strange. Whoops.
How well did you know Chad? I know they maybe had met and developed a relationship over the past year and a half or so, but they got married pretty quickly, especially soon after both of their spouses had passed. How well did she know him, and how well did you guys know him?
I don't know the first time when Lori met Chad. I met Chad initially in the fall of 2018, and he was selling his books, and I met him, and he's very quiet and humble guy that just seemed kind of kept to himself. And I had no reason to think anything other than he's just trying to sell his books and just be a good person. And Lori and Chad had a friendship, and I don't know when they initially met. I think they shared some spiritual beliefs, or would talk about it with his books or ideas in his books.
Okay, she just prattles on. But she mentioned that she met Chad in the fall of 2018. Chad was selling his books. So it sounds like she was there. I think there's also a picture out there of Lori and Melanie together in the audience. But okay. Now, October 26th was also law enforcement's first record of Lori, Chad, Alex, and other co-conspirators conspiring to murder Tylee and JJ. So we're not going to go too deep into this, but you can see here. Let me zoom in. This is talking about the murder in the first degree of Tylee Ryan on or between October 26, 2018. So not October 1st, October 26th, and June 9th, which is the date that we know Tylee was buried on Chad's property. Chad Guy Daybell and Lori Noreen Vallow did endorse and espouse religious beliefs for the purpose of encouraging and or justifying the homicide of Tylee Ryan. And it was the same with JJ. Here we have murder of JJ Vallow and grand theft on or between October 26, 2018 and June 9th, 2020. Chad Guy Daybell and Lori Noreen Vallow did endorse and teach religious beliefs for the purpose of justifying the homicide of JJ Vallow. So this is unbelievable because they meet for the first time, and unfortunately, it does seem to be fairly reliable that they met for the first time because of Chad's horrendous romance story that he shared with Lori. And he actually texted her one day, and we'll get to that part of the timeline probably in weeks. Like he just texted her parts of this story all throughout the day. And it's a harrowing tale. But it reads like a 12-year-old's romance. But in this story between these supposedly fictitious lovers, they met on October 26, 2018. Okay. So like I said, I suspect that they were in contact before then, but actually met in person on that day. All right. The next day, Chad started performing Google searches for members of Lori's family and quote many obituaries. So he meets her on the 26th, and the next day is Googling these people. So here, let's see, October 27th, 2018 to November 1st, 2019. So they cast a pretty wide net with this of a little more than a year. Chad Daybell's Google account shows numerous searches during these period. These include the names of Lori Vallow, Charles Vallow, Alex Cox, and Melanie. This would be Boudreaux. In addition, I noticed many searches for Arizona obituaries. So, I mean, call me jaded. I can't imagine that he would have done many searches for Arizona obituaries. I do wonder if someone is doing Phoenix police a solid by not mentioning Joe specifically, because I strongly suspect that on October 27th, that's or close to, I strongly suspect, I can't prove it, but I suspect that that Chad had Googled Joe, because there had to be something to inform his dark rating of Joe, which would come just a few days after this. So, all right. Okay. October 28th, 2018, Lori Vallow enters Chad Daybell's cell phone number as Melanie 2 and Bishop Shumway in her cell phone. So this was redacted in one source, but it was left unredacted in another source. So that's how I found out about the Bishop Shumway. So here, let's see. Okay. Yeah. On 7/18/2019 at 6:55 in the morning, Lori sent an SMS message to Melanie 2 at the number and redacted. In a database available to law enforcement, this number was found to return to Chad and Tamara Daybell. Communication between Lori and Chad using this number started on, and we actually know now that, oh, yeah. Okay. Started on the, whatever account on 7/14/2019, 3 days after Charles' murder. This number and contact was also found in I think this would have been Lori for style because she hadn't created the Lollytime account yet. I don't think. Yeah, definitely not in October. Found in the whatever account and entered as a contact on 10/28/2018. So Lori stored Chad's number as Melanie 2 and Bishop Shumway. All right. Okay. So let's see. Okay. On October 30th, 2018. Now there is a conflict here on these dates, but I did find in the Gilbert police report that and in fact, just today, because I was just searching all of the FOIA docs for any reference to 2018. I've been doing that for a while now, but was finished up today. So on October 30th, 2018, Chad emailed Lori about the Church of the Firstborn and sent ratings for her family members. And this was the source that I just found today. And I've talked about this in Cool Cats because up until today, I haven't been able to find any confirmation that this email was sent on October 30th because there was another email where Chad that Chad sent to Lori, and I believe it was January 22nd, 2019. But anyway, here it says on October 30th, 2018, Chad Daybell emailed his future wife, Lori Vallow-Daybell, with a document regarding the Church of the Firstborn. The document shared, and we actually looked at this in reference to Lori and Melanie starting to spend more time together. But this just confirms that this is when Chad first sent these ratings. And these ratings are significant because I believe that they quantify all of Lori's, I don't know, grievances that she had. Like if Lori liked someone, if she trusted that person, like Colby, Melanie, Melanie Boudreaux, Summer, then they were rated a light spirit. But if she didn't, then they were rated a dark spirit. So Colby's wife, Kelsey, was a dark spirit. Joe was a dark spirit. Tylee was a dark spirit. Brandon was a dark spirit. And he did all of this just within days of meeting Lori. So you can see that they are already beginning the plans of murdering, allegedly, Tammy, Charles. Now we don't have a date for Charles because that wasn't, I don't believe, in the affidavit of probable cause, they don't state like when the conspiracy began. We only know for Idaho, and obviously Charles' death falls outside of Idaho's purview. But clearly, if they were planning on murdering Tammy, they were probably planning on murdering Charles. But the one odd thing is that Charles was rated a light spirit at that time. Okay, but as I mentioned, Kay had forwarded an email from Chad that he had sent to Lori. This says January 24th. I actually think it was the 22nd. Yeah, it was the 22nd. So I'll need to correct that. But you see all these forwards, but Chad had sent this to Lori on January 22nd, and it says family history records. So I don't know if that is something different or if this was maybe he had just sent it to her again. We don't know. But McKay came into possession of these ratings in March of 2019. So this was before Charles was even killed, because Charles found them on January 24th. Wait, let's see. Yeah. He found them on January 24th, emailed them. So he found them in Lori's account, emailed them to his Gmail, and then forwarded them to Kay in March. So you see here, Charles to Kay Vallow, and this was March 9th. So Kay knew about these dark ratings as early as March. And we also know that when Charles found out about these dark ratings, he was talking to everyone, even Melanie Boudreaux and Janice Cox make references to these, dark spirits. I believe it was Janice. But so he was throwing a very wide net, just trying to get people to take this seriously. So I believe, especially with as gossipy as the Cox family is, I strongly suspect the entire Cox family knew that, like, Tylee and Kelsey and Brandon, some of these other family members had been rated as dark spirits. Okay, October 31st, Chad activates a Cricket wireless phone number under the name of Boyd Dial. I know that this was the name because it was left unredacted in another document. So I have a Google spreadsheet of, I call it clown car numbers and accounts. And so anytime I find something that's unredacted, I drop it in that Google spreadsheet, and then I can cross-reference things. And then that kind of informs what I drop into some of these redactions. Anyway, so just a few days after meeting Lori for the first time, he already activated at least one burner phone, which is highly suspicious. Lori saved this number under the name Bubby in her phone, which synced to her Lori First Saw iCloud account. She later added it to her second phone on July 2nd, a week before Charles was murdered, which synced to her Lollytime iCloud account. And I shared those sources. I'm not going to share all of those. This was also the number Chad used when he called Valley of the Sun mortuary on the day Charles was shot and killed, under the clever pseudonym of Chad Daybell. I think that's how he pronounced it. So this was a guess. This does fit in other redactions. I think that this may be his iCloud account. His Gmail is chad.daybell at gmail.com. We know that from that's listed on his site. But he also had a separate iCloud account and Chad.Daybell definitely doesn't fit in this redaction. But here you see the creation of Bubby phone, which I also think is super creepy, because I had talked about this even before this came out in the FOIA docs, that Lori called Colby Bubby when he was younger. So I initially, when I saw this, I thought that it was Colby, but so it's just a little weird. Maybe she just uses this as, I don't know, a name for anyone who she finds endearing. I don't know. Anyway, okay, but there are the details about the account, and this is another source. This is where it talks about, this is the number that he used when he called Valley of the Sun mortuary. This is a very bizarre story. He identified his uncle as John Myron Daybell. And yeah, and he couldn't remember his number initially, because I listened to the recording. And then he, shared this burner phone number. And anyway, it's a very, very weird story. If you want to read it, just go back to this part in the video. I do always go back. Well, I don't know that I will in this case. This would be a lot of additions to add, but I generally go back after the video is live and add links to different points in the video and I drop them in the description. So if you ever want to jump ahead, yeah, I will do that in this case. If you ever want to jump ahead to that particular part of the video, you can do that. Okay. I also noted that the MSISDN, so that's some kind of identifier for a phone, was only active from July 1st, 2019. So this is the Boyd Dial account. Oh, and also this Boyd Dial was a PO box in Mesa. So Chad created this account, but the address was Mesa. But it was only active from July 1st. So he purchased it October 31st, 2018, but then it was only active. It wasn't activated until July 1st of 2019 and was only active until October 8th, 2019. So this was the day before Tammy was approached by the masked gunman. And looking at Lori's iCloud account, she entered this number in her contact listed on July 2nd. So this is leading up to the shooting of her then husband, Charles Vallow. And Chad first used the phone. So he activated it on July 1st. So he purchased it October 31st, activated it July 1st. So just a little more than a week before Charles was shot. And then first used the phone 2 days after Charles was shot. Which to me begs the question, how many burner phones did Chad activate immediately after meeting Lori? I mean, first of all, why would you even need multiple burner phones? We do know from the Dateline producer account on Twitter, it said that there were 60, and that law enforcement found as many as, I think, 60 burner phones. And I forget how many email addresses there were. I think it was somewhere around 25. Let me see if I include that. Whoops. No. Sir. No, I don't think I do. No. Okay. All right. I need to add that. All right. November, approximate date, Lori receives the life insurance payout. This was the confidential source who told me this, that it was sometime I think he thought it was maybe early November. He wasn't really sure. Lori was the primary beneficiary of the policy. Tylee was not listed as a beneficiary. So early on, there was information shared that Tylee was the beneficiary. One of Lori's friends even said, Tylee said, that she was rich now. Not true. It's just not supported by the evidence. And I know for a fact that Tylee wasn't included as a beneficiary because I was in touch with the life insurance company after finding out from someone investigating the case that I was listed as a beneficiary. So the person shared something. I don't know if it was accidental or if it was meant to be, like, I'm not telling you Lori was the main beneficiary, but she said I forget how she put it, but something to the effect of the beneficiary was not impacted by their being divorced. And so I was like, oh, okay, well, obviously that was Lori. And I did ask about Tylee, and the person said no. So Lori receives this money sometime in November. And I also remember early on, if anyone was in the first Facebook group, and I always forget the name of it, that a bunch of us were in, because it was just kind of, it was a really morbid name and it kept being archived, and now it's called something else, but it had something to do with I forget. But anyway, in the first Facebook group I was in, if it comes to me, I'll share it. Someone had said that at that time, now you don't know how much confidence to put in these, and unfortunately, early on, I wasn't taking as many screenshots because I didn't think that like one day that group would go under. But this person had shared that they had been in their home and that no one was working at that time. And I believe this person referenced November, but this person said it was really strange because you would go over there and no one was working. So I don't know if that's because they had the life insurance money, or what exactly was going on with that. But anyway, okay, so the next month, so I just found this today on December 8th, and this I think is significant because this is the first time Chad mentions that he sealed away evil spirits. This was in a very strange text exchange he had with Zulema. I'm not going to read the entire thing. This is a solid pattern of Zulema reaching out to both Chad and Lori, trying to curry favor, asking a lot of questions and asking for help. Zulema interprets every headache as demonic attack and all kinds of different things. So she is under this impression that she is just making such a dent in the kingdom of darkness that she's being attacked by all of these evil spirits. So she said on December 8th, Chad, could you help me again? I'm being attacked again. It's in my head again. Well, that I probably agree with. In my forehead and temples. I think they're trying to stop me from visions. It's like my third eye is cloudy or foggy. And Julie Rowe talks about this concept of a third eye. But she follows up, I'm in a lot of pain. Chad replied, hi, Zulema. I just removed several weapons from your head and healed the damage. I also sealed away the evil spirits that were bothering you. I hope this helps. And then I left the rest of it in there just because I think it's interesting. If you want to check it out, feel free. But later that month, a couple days after Christmas, she reaches back out and says, Merry Christmas. I hope you had a beautiful time with your family. Could you tell me if I have weapons on my back? I think I'm being attacked again. Chad replied, hi, Zulema. I have captured and sealed away the evil spirits that were attacking you, and I have removed the weapons from you. I am healing the damage. Zulema, are these demons? They feel different. And Chad said, yes, they are higher level demons. I will reinforce the shield around you. And then Zulema said, oh my goodness, I can move my shoulder blade now. Thank you. And, Chad, I'm happy to hear that, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that this is significant because in those light and dark ratings, Chad actually noted that Joe was the darkest spirit among all of the family members that he listed, and noted that he is now sealed away. And so I think in Chad's mind, clearly Lori had shared with him, because she was just obsessed with Joe. When I was there, she was talking about, Joe abusing Tylee and all of these different things. She clearly talked about this with Chad right when she met him, because, he marks Joe as a very dark spirit and is sealed away. And so I think that not only did Chad give Lori some kind of, number to identify Joe as like Yes, let me confirm. He was very evil. I think in Chad's mind, or at least in his, teaching in his little belief system, Joe was an actual evil spirit. He was overtaken, and we know the story. If you've been following the case, he purported this whole belief that that someone would just be overtaken by an evil spirit, which was later upgraded to a zombie. Like they became a zombie when their spirit was overtaken by an evil spirit. And in his mind, now Joe, who was overtaken by this evil spirit and was somehow like one with this evil spirit, was sealed away. And I believe in, with some of the other references that he made, it seems to indicate that the evil spirit was like sent to hell and was like banished to hell, couldn't come back to torment people. And I also think that this is significant because Lori had told Phoenix police on April 13th when she was interviewed, I think this was just a phone interview, that she hadn't heard from Joe in about 2 years. So it's in this part of the incident report. Lori told me she had not heard from Joseph in about 2 years. Now, when I was there in May, I had asked Tylee when she had last seen Joe. It was the only personal question I asked her about Joe. And she first glanced at Lori and said it had been a year. But a confidential source, and back in 2020, I had asked a confidential source when Tylee had last seen Joe. Then obviously I've redacted this person's information. The blue is me. I'm trying to chase down some details around Joe. A reporter sent me pics. They, FOIA'd from the day of his welfare check. But I'm wondering if you have any idea when Tylee last saw her dad. So this person said, Tylee last saw her dad that summer after they moved to Hawaii. And I redacted anything that shared any kind of, personal information or anything that wasn't relevant. As far as I know, that was the last time, because while she was in Hawaii, and then I redacted this part because there was some personal information. But she is talking about Tylee, that she finally had that conversation with her dad that she wasn't going to see him again. And then this person followed up June 2014. And this person was very close. And I have confirmed that this person was involved and not involved in the deaths, but was very, very close. I said, that's really helpful. Thank you. Do you know when they moved to Hawaii? And this person said, I believe that was May 2014. So in June 2014, Tylee had told her dad that she didn't want to see him anymore. And I also know from this confidential source, I don't know if this was around the same time, but he had gotten mad at Tylee. And Tylee had a friend over, and according to this person, Joe had locked Tylee and the friend out of his apartment. And so that was the last time that this friend would be allowed to go with Tylee to visit Joe. Anyway, so, that's June of 2014. So where am I going with this? Well, even with the discrepancies between like Tylee's claim about not seeing Joe for a year, Lori's claim that she hadn't heard from him in about 2 years. So that doesn't mean that he saw her, but it clearly seems like Joe and Tylee didn't have a relationship at that time. So for Lori to still be going on and on about Joe as being like this ever-present threat in October of 2018 one in this testimony that she shared at Melanie Gibbs, and then, clearly she must have shared some of these details with Chad, is really bizarre. And I think it's an indicator of just how obsessive Lori is. Okay. All right. So we are going to stop there. This went a little longer just because I started with an intro. Like I said, next time I'm just going to jump right into the timeline, and we're going to pick up where we left off. So, and we are not going to meet next week because that's the Friday before Christmas. But then we will meet the following week. So I wish all of you a very happy holiday. And again, if you have any questions, please just drop them in the comments and I will try to answer your questions. Have a great night.